Welcome to Lead Live, reminding you of your personal genius and how you think in order to actualize what you desire.
Welcome to Lead Live. In the spirit of a loved one, I'm dedicating today's broadcast to him, Brian Monroe. He was the first guest for this Lead Live series. And he was the first guest because he epitomized what it means to lead, to have a mindset that facilitates really greatness. This morning, something happened that was in the works, you could say, since his birth. We're here for a spell. This gentleman, known as an American journalist, educator, entrepreneur, he's been the Verizon chair and professor at Temple University, Klein College of Media and Communications. Before joining Temple, he was the Washington editor, opinion and commentary at CNN and editor of CNNpolitics.com. Some of you may have known him because of his work with the Ebony and Jet magazines, the Johnson Publishing Company. He was the editorial director, and he was the individual, he and his team were the individuals who made certain that Barack Obama had his face on those major publications at the time. And that set off his presidential run, in addition to other efforts that his team was engaged in. He was also the last person to interview Michael Jackson. Yes, the famous Michael Jackson. And humble in his interaction with so many dignitaries throughout this country and beyond. He's a visiting professor at Northwestern University's Medhill School of Journalism. Monroe, Brian, as loved ones, we call him dearly, helped lead the team of journalists from Night Rider and the Biloxi Sun Herald in Mississippi, which won them the 2006 Pulitzer Prize Gold Medal for Public Service for coverage of Hurricane Katrina. He was the 16th president of the National Association of Black Journalists. In April 2015, he was named Verizon chair professor at Temple University's Klein School of Media and Communication. I mentioned that to play emphasis or add emphasis to his leadership roles in education and the public space as a journalist, as a photographer at heart. He was also the Nieman Fellow at Harvard University in 2002 and 2003. He chose to be among the best and the brightest. He led with conviction, walking towards clarity, towards honesty, and towards transparency. He cared about justice in all of its manifestations: social, economic, political. One could argue he was a political junkie, but not for the sake of being a junkie. He really wanted to understand in order to influence. And we're going to come back to that notion in a moment. He would put himself on the front lines and work behind the scenes with others to get things right for the greatest good. His heart-led commitment to equity, diversity, and inclusion helped to forge a sea change in the representation of Blacks, Latinx, Asians, and other people of color in the media via television, being online, via print. He was a journalist, teaching how to leverage facts and other resources to produce quality and yes, excellence. He was our loved one for many of us. He is our loved one, the loving dad to my godchildren, niece and nephew, Shauna and Jackson, the loving son whew, of Major General Monroe, brother to Danya, son of Charlene, partner to Abe, cousin to many, confidant to many, friends to many. I can go on and on in terms of the countless folks through within the US and beyond the US of A, who he's touched and influenced and leveraged. Like all of us, he was a human being with imperfections who chose to use his capacity for the greatest good. I say some things in the present, I said some things in the past tense because he just died this morning. I'm sure as his children, my godchildren, I share with others, many others, as they share, along with the rest of us, share this information with people he touched, we'll be thinking about him and experiencing him. And to all of you who are like so many of us, who've experienced so many transitions of loved ones recently, due to COVID, due to other reasons, my heart goes out to you always. And certainly, of course, now. I bring Brian up not just because of what I am experiencing. I bring him up because the topic today is about philanthropy. And at his heart, although he didn't use the word, I think, philanthropy, I never heard him use that word. That's what he was. He was a philanthropic individual. He was about giving. And when we ask the question, what is a philanthropist? There are individuals who donate, whether it's money, which we typically think in terms of philanthropy, they donate time, they donate expertise, whether it's knowledge, skills, access to resources. That was the nature of this gentleman. Who can be a philanthropist like him? Yes, he highly educated because he chose to be. He chose that. Highly learned because he chose to be. Stellar writer because he chose to be. More importantly, critical thinker because he chose to be. So he could see the macro picture, whether it was the manipulation or it was the honest transactions. He could see the micro picture, the actual individual transactions that were going on. And he could use his mental tools and emotional capacity to discern with clarity what was really going on behind the scenes. I want to honor the fact that we experienced something in the United States and the world got to witness it. That was horrific. And I have no doubt, because of some of the questions that have already come in, that you want to talk about that. And we will. This gentleman, Brian, was, in his spirit, I'm sure still is, the embodiment of let's look for the promise. How can we address this in a systematic way? Let's understand the ideology, the history, what led to this. Let's make clear what actually occurred, make it transparent. So the things that occurred that were horrific never happen again. They were horrific even if they didn't result in death. They're even more horrific because so many people died. One is too many. They're primarily horrific because the foundation on which this country is supposed to be built, rules, laws, set of values that are more altruistic in nature, were trampled on. And what became evident was that what we hope is really a hope, it's an aspiration. We need to fight to experience that hope in terms of the nature of the United States of America. And the work that Brian did consistently evidenced those realities, whether it was through photography, through Twitter, through text, through engagement in small group chat or large group chat, whether it was in the classroom, outside of the classroom, leveraging Zoom, leveraging conferences. Let me tell you, he demonstrated what all of us have the capacity to do at some level, synergistic with our own passion for life and commitment. So thank you, Brian, for being a accessible as a brother, for being accessible as a friend, for being accessible as a professional resource, for being accessible as another human being, for reminding me of my capacity to do, and I could fill in the blank, and I do. Reminding me of my responsibility to be well, to be healthy for everyone I care about, in order to continue to do the good that I intend to do, to make the impact that I intend to make. But let me say, just like Brian, we don't know if we have the next moment, the next day, the next year. What we do know is we have this moment. And I encourage you to leverage this moment now. It's easy to say, I'm overwhelmed. And I get that really right now. It's easy to say, I'm in fear mode. And then we stop. I get that for good reasons. Yet it is so remarkable when we can press through it and still show up. My physical wiring was to say, let's just have a rebroadcast today. I need to get through this. And then I think the Brian in me was like, no, folks, let them see this. Let them see aspects of what they experience themselves for validation, for understanding, for clarity that we get to experience the diverse range of emotions in order to better show up. And emphasis is on better show up, show up, show up, show up. And before we know it, we've not only gotten through the pain, although it may last a long time, seem like it's ever long, we are able to leverage that pain to build something that benefits, whether you're altruistic or whether you really just enjoy giving because of the satisfaction it gives you. If it's done with honesty, the level of integrity, with your own clarity, I say do it. And with that in mind, I just want to stick a little bit to my previous script so that I don't just do the emotional thing, which is powerful and valuable. So I'm not negating it at all. Why do people who are philanthropic engage as such? In general, we tell the textbook is we want to create a better world. Well, some of us are not even thinking about the better world. We're thinking about the legacies for our family. We're thinking about the legacy of our name. When we're altruistic, we're thinking about the legacy of the communities that we're in, the society that we reside, in which we reside, the planet as a whole. And why is that critical? We don't know what really happens after this life. Yes, there's some of us who've died and we've come back and we had those experiences and we can say, here's what our experience. We don't know. We know some things. We've learned from others. I should qualify that. Many of us don't know. It's possible that some people on the planet do know. But let me just say, assuming that our spirits continue, which I firmly believe, given so much evidence, not only my own, uh, what I've read and heard from others, assuming that we continue as spirit beings, Brian, I believe, is ever present for all of us, especially for his children. And that essence of who he was, his spirit is, philanthropic, has already had been mined, or I should say, to use plant analogy, had been cultivated, where it allowed itself to be evident in his remarkable son's philanthropic efforts. Jackson is a whiz in social media with over 1 million followers. That guy is taking care of business, capturing key information, and sharing it through social media in order to make a positive difference. What kind of legacy is that? That is remarkable. His daughter, oh my goodness, the older of the two, Shauna, a brilliant mind. I can see her working in the future if she chooses to for an organization like NASA or building her own business in addition to teaching her favorite subject, math. She's much more than that, those set of talents. She's got this brilliant mind to synthesize things. What better legacy? So thank you, Brian, for creating a legacy in two of our most important assets, our children. You did much more than that, though. And that's the power of philanthropy. Yes, we have a tendency of thinking in terms of money. Yes, we all need money. But we already know when we think about the wealth equation and what's wealth, finance is one part of it. But the real wealth is faith, family, fitness, fun, and finance. And finance is so critical in order to be able to have a latitude to do the things you need to do to support your family, to be fit in terms of healthcare, in terms of exercise, etc., the right food, but also fun to have a balanced life. So, philanthropy, when it's done well, it honors those 5 aspects of wealth. When it is done well, it could be as simple as time tutoring individuals in schools. It could be as simple as a business saying, as part of your our company's legacy, everyone will have 5 hours off every 2 months or every month to engage in volunteerism. And it's a requirement for the job. I know a number of organizations, small and large. I mean, Salesforce does it. A lot of us have heard of Salesforce. But there's smaller organizations that many of us have not heard of who do the same. They do it because it's who they are, or they fundraise, or they're part of a fundraising activity that is continuous to ensure the success of whether it's a small organization, it's a community, or it is a large organization that without the kind of sustainable philanthropic support would not be here. Why is philanthropy important? Well, think about healthcare. Think about public education or private education. Think about colleges, especially historically Black, historically Hispanic colleges and universities. Think about libraries. Think about the arts, whether they're fine or performing arts. Think about our various free community services. Many of those assets in our communities that we tend to take for granted would not exist without philanthropy. Yes, we know philanthropy comes in the form of what I shared before, someone's time, set of resources, other kind expertise, whether it's knowledge, skills, and access to key individuals who have resources, those included. And so, who are those individuals? I already said Brian is an excellent example. He gave of himself on a regular basis. He slept on the floor, during a sustained period of time, during Katrina, just to make certain that story was right and capture things. No one, so what? Who would know he was there? Well, his family did. We did. His wife at the time, his children, I did, his parents, his sister, his cousins, his community of journalists. But it wasn't about him. It was about the story, getting it right, illuminating what was happening to people. That's part of philanthropy. And so a lot of what he did was on his own. Yes, it was part of his professional commitment and roles, but no one told him he had to do it. He chose to do it. That's the difference between being doing something because it's part of work or it's part of a demand from someone of a higher authority or someone with great influence, and doing something because it comes from your heart. It's what you're wired to do, or it's part of the value set of you or your organization or both. And ideally, we think of this society in philanthropic ways. And I think that's why a lot of us had great difficulty not only knowing that a mob was trying to take over the Capitol and actually hang people, tie them up, otherwise brutalize folks. It wasn't as minor as I initially thought. Oh my goodness. Finding the facts, discovering the facts from journalists like Brian and many others was absolutely disturbing and still is. Horrific, especially considering who, meaning a variety of folks led by our current president, stoked, facilitated, engaged, all that. So, how do we turn things around where, in fact, the legacy on which this country was built, which is not all good, in fact, it's synergistic with that mob? How do we redo the foundation of this country? Literally, it's like taking an old house and putting it on a new foundation. Recognize it's still an old house. There are still cracks in it. But we don't want to get rid of the entire house. So we retrofit it. We transform it. We systematically eliminate one wall. We clean it up, we put in a new wall, we rewire it. How do we do that as a country? Well, philanthropy is a wonderful way to do that. And I'm going to use a name of someone that is very controversial, and not just because he's controversial or as a spirit now, but definitely human form was because of his legacy. A lot of it was not great. He knew his legacy and he wanted to build a better legacy, arguably, according to the records. His name was Andrew Carnegie. So, what did that guy do? In the history of philanthropy, he is the number one, unless I've got my information wrong, and I hope it's right. Donating his wealth in the hundreds of billions of dollars to some of the kinds of organizations and institutions that I talked about. Of course, we know Carnegie Hall is named after him, and there's so many others. Carnegie Institute for Advancement of Teaching, many libraries, universities, community centers, over 1,000 church organs. I mean, over 7,000 church organs and resources across this globe. You know, one could argue, as some have, he's trying to make up for what he did when he was alive. Whatever the reason, we know our hearts, no one else does. We also know the behaviors. And in this case, philanthropic behaviors lead to better results, assuming the set of values are the values that, in fact, are positive, complementary. So I like to kind of lump things into this acronym that I created years ago when I was in grad school. VIP. Most of us, when we hear VIP, what are we thinking? We're thinking, oh, that's a very important person. Values, integrity, and political influence. Listen to that. Values, integrity, and political influence. So what do I mean by values? It is, what we hold in high regard. whether it's being respectful, collaborative, being honest, functioning with integrity. You can go on and on and on. It's what we consider to be of worth. So we're not just talking about dollars, we're talking about real principles that drive our behavior, not what we say, actually what we do. Hopefully, what we say is consistent with what we do, especially if it's affirming, if it's positive. So, what's integrity? It's really the consistency between what we say we're about and what we do. So, hopefully, what we say we're about and what we do is complementary. There's another part of integrity that goes beyond just congruency between statement and action, and that is being honest and having some strong moral compass or principles. Being morally upright, as the dictionary would say, the state of being whole and undivided. So integrity suggests that there's alignment, there's congruency, and things are functioning. But we already know what's happening across this country. Or do we? Because in private homes, a lot of things are working well, even with the imperfections. In communities, a lot of things are working well, even with the imperfections. In society, likewise. And yet there's an underpinning. And I wouldn't say it's just on the fringe. I would say it's pretty replete throughout this society where there are families, there are communities, there are tight networks across this country that are not functioning with a level of integrity that is consistent with a strong moral, affirming, positive compass. We're going to come back to that in a second. And then political. What do I mean by that when I say values, integrity, and political influence? We tend to think of rules and regulations as part of a government. We tend to think of a governmental set of practices, right? Rules and regulations that govern. But I'm talking about politics is really, from my perspective, it's at the level of a family, it's at the level of a community, it's at the level of a state, it's at the level of an organization, at the level of a country, right? It's really how we engage the other. And Brian had a better way to describe politics, and I wish I had prepared. Don't know what you don't know, and to be able to reference it. But I'm going to identify his statement and make certain that it's online in the Facebook chat, in the YouTube chat, and then with Roku TV and Amazon, so that you could see his description, which I think is more profound than mine. But these three key components, values, integrity, and political control, what do they suggest? They suggest, in terms of the whole area of philanthropy, the degree to which those areas are aligned, values, integrity, and political influence, the degree to which those areas are aligned, and one chooses to, again, give of his or her time, give money, give expertise, one's intelligence, its knowledge, skills, people they have access to that could help. That leads to embedding in the core foundation of this country what we need for our houses to be solid, to be unwavering, to not break down as we experienced last week. I'm not certain that I use that metaphor in the most useful way, but hopefully you're following me. I see some comments. Thank you for joining. Most people don't think about the legacy of their name. Yeah, that's true, Tomoko. Most people don't. And yet I think a lot of people think about, think of their lives, whether they're young people or older, more short term, not in terms of, how can I build something that actually pays itself forward? And in reality, we're always building things that pay themselves forward. But what they pay for, we may not, in reflection, may not be happy about. So the degree to which we're clear about our values, because otherwise, if we're not clear, we're taking on those that we read about, we hear about, we've been exposed to, whether we're as children or otherwise, the degree to which we're clear about our values, the clear degree to we can get closer to the level of integrity that we want, having that strong moral compass. And we can be even clearer about how we engage the other in a way that is not only has its level of transparency, but it honors the others. And it ensures that the kind of political outcomes, whether it's in support of, you fill in the blank, an individual, a neighbor, a community, a school, a club, a church, a business, society, the world, is in the direction that we want. I like how you talked about how many different services in our community, such as schools, libraries, museums, healthcare, rely on philanthropy. Yes, yes, and many, many more. I'm going to take some questions now because as I'm sure a lot of you can appreciate, I'm emotionally spent from this morning, and I really want to emphasize for those of you who are alone, who are literally physically alone, and may feel emotionally alone, know that there's so many of us who care about you. We don't know your name, true. We may not even know where you live, where you reside on the planet, true. We care about you. So please, it's okay to experience what you experience, especially if it's distressful, especially if you're in this country and you experience what you experienced last week, or you're experiencing the transition of loved ones, the passing of loved ones in your lives. Allow yourself to show up in the way that you can. Don't overdo it. Just take it one step at a time. Okay, Jet, can you share the first question? Philanthropy is about promoting the welfare of others, right? Yes. Yes. I like that. That's a simple way of conveying philanthropy. Yeah. Yeah. Promoting the welfare of others. And whether it is in support of a particular institution like a hospital that is serving countless number of individuals, and without that philanthropic investment, they would not be here and they would not be able to serve that elder, that child, that homeless person, or that family that just lost their income. So those of you, whether you're giving literally as important as it is a dollar, 10,000, a million, a remarkable set of services over a 6-month period, access to people who have the talent, whatever you're doing that's philanthropic, that's powerful. I want to honor you by sharing my gratitude. Yes, it's about the overall well-being of others and the welfare of others. At the end of the day, it's not just about a business. Even if it helps a widget get produced, to be simplistic, that widget is serving a purpose for others. Next question, Jet. My partner and I are seeking private investors to acquire another company. We completed our due diligence and ready to make it happen. How do we secure a partner with high assets? Important question. Two things. Well, first, let me answer your question right away. Think about you and your partner have been in a place where you have the intelligence and the know-how to carry out due diligence, to determine, based on a benefit cost comparison study, and whatever else you did in terms of marketing, in terms of leveraging other professionals, uh, checking in to the assets of the organization, its stability, its historical record, and its prominence. You have talents that you've used to carry out that due diligence. I strongly recommend you use those same talents to identify high net worth individuals and organizations. It could be as simple, and I know I've told people this and they're like, yeah, right. And then people have done it and they're like, oh my goodness. It could be as simple as doing an internet search. It's amazing what has occurred over the years in terms of access to information online. And let me also say that there are a lot of high net worth individuals who are not online and they do what they can to prevent any of their private information from getting online. So the question is, who do they work with? Well, they work with banks and not just with the bank teller or the bank manager or the senior vice president. They work with key individuals who are among a broker network. And so we're going to do a special program just on how to connect with high net worth individuals. And as soon as I confirm it with Jet, we'll advertise it in advance, give you time. It'll happen in February. So that show is dedicated to that. We encourage you to look at who you know now, check in with your network. And for those of you who are thinking about this, make it a point before you get to this place where you've already done your due diligence, you're looking for a partner to invest. Along the way, ask the folks with whom you're talking, who do they know? Demonstrate your wherewithal to be a good partner. Demonstrate your wherewithal because you have particular expertise that others who have high net worth would want to align with. So it's almost like building your mastermind group long before you need it, where you have expertise other people need, and you choose people to be part of that 3 or 4 person mastermind group and have assets that you don't, where you're able to help them, they're able to help you. And the agreement going into that mastermind is that you're all on the same accord. You're all there to help the other. You're not there first and primarily for the self. But assuming you've not done that, as these partners may not have done, leverage your network, right? Literally go through and take out what we used to call Rolodex. Go to your Excel spreadsheet, identify all the individuals who are connected. There may be only 3 on that list. Those 3 likely at least per person know at least 3 others, and they may be willing to share their list. So what do you have now? You have a list of 12. And then those may be able to share their list of at least 1. What do you have now? You have a list of 15. You go from there. You build a base of connection, ask some really open-ended question. Don't run in there and expect for someone to say, "Oh, you look beautiful. You're dressed beautifully. Great plan. We want to invest." People connect with people. What does that mean? You build relationships. People need to know you, and they may not invest in you and invest in the project or even partner with you for 6 months. And that's short. It may be more like 2, 3, or 5 years because they're studying you. They're studying how you engage. They're looking at your credit. Yes, we have access, all of us do, to information about people that they try to keep private. And those who have more wealth, they're better able to do it than most of us. But you want to, in a systematic way, leverage your resources. There's more on that, and my apologies for not going to more deep depth, but hopefully that's helpful. What's the next question, Jet? I'm so fearful now. Oh my God. Whew. What happened last week at and in the US Capitol was despicable, alarming. In the midst of this chaos, our nonprofit needs help to survive. Ideas. So many emotions, so many thoughts. One of the salient ideas is if you've not tapped into, and I'm going to put in quotes, quote, stimulus funds, unquote, encourage you to check in with your CPA, check in with your financial expert, and see what resources may be available there to address your immediate needs since you're a nonprofit. And assuming you've been around for at least a year, maybe 2 years, you've got some stable records, et cetera. The other is to do that basic search, however you do it, through an expert who's familiar with philanthropy and foundations, for example, to determine who among the philanthropic community are wired to support a nonprofit like yours. I don't know what the nature of your nonprofit, yet there's a diversity of individuals who invest. Someone couldn't imagine that, what is her name? Give me a moment. I am trying to remember her name. Mackenzie Scott, I believe, the ex-wife of Jeff Bezos of Amazon. She donated 40 million in literally 4 months. And she did it in support of historically Black colleges and universities. Kudos to her. But whether you donate that 40 million or someone has 10,000 to donate, you have an end that you need to achieve, whatever it is. An end meaning a number. And you be clear about that. You be clear about why. You be clear about your values as an organization, your mission as an organization, and the overarching vision where you're going, and how these resources are going to help you get make progress on whatever strategic priority or priorities that you've established. So that those basics you need to have in advance of even considering communicating with others. Get those in order. But in the meantime, have someone help you, or you go about systematically studying to determine who's wired to support your kind of business. Within the foundation world, as individuals, you may be surprised. There's a lot of money on an annual basis left on the table because people are just not asking. Okay, next question. And as the question comes up, oh, there it is. What is going on in the in the U.S.? Whoops, I dropped water as a result of just reading that. As a visitor, I thought this country was among the safest on the planet. That's a whole conversation in itself. I'll say that what we witnessed last week, as one had already conveyed, was horrific. What we witnessed also is part of the legacy of these United States. And when we own our legacy, we can heal. And too many of us have not chose to own this legacy. What do I mean by that? Be truthful about our history, how we came to be, how this land, these parcels of land across this country were stolen on the backs of people who were already here, how people were literally killed, how people were stolen away from countries, how people were enslaved, how people were killed if they didn't help build the economy of this country, how people were required to be tied down, at least metaphorically, if not literally, to railroads to build them from China, how people were, there's so many stories. There's so many stories that do not get the light of day, are not honored. There are too few stories that are true that are honored. A lot of the stories that we read in history books are slightly slanted to the person who wrote it, to their own value set. Remember I talked about values? To their own integrity set. Remember I talked about integrity? And political influence that they want to make. So you be the antidote. You share what you learn to be the factual set of realities. And the degree to which we honor what was, we can say, are we still about that? Or do we want to shift? Or better yet, do we want to go into a completely new paradigm of existence? We have the capacity. Yes, I know some people said, oh, it'll never change, not in my lifetime. Well, then, and you know what? You're absolutely right. And other people say it can change and it will change, and they're right too. We create the realities that we experience. We're more powerful than we let on or than we are even aware. So we as a country, and yes, you're a visitor, and I am so pleased you got to see the facts. I am horrified that you got to see the facts. Both. Pleased because we can't say this isn't the truth. Horrified because we get to say we get to work on this too. We get to work. We are responsible for addressing that. And that was the spirit of Brian. It's like, okay, what's next? How do I get this information out there? How do I do it in a way that helps to shift people's understanding? Shift because the facts are the facts. There's your truth, my truth, and the facts. And I never want my truth to get in the way of the facts. And that's why I spend a lot of time working on myself. And that's part of the legacy of Brian. What does, it's one of my beautiful nieces, Christian. She writes, unfortunately, too many people accept what is perceived as valuable in the society in which they live or grew up in versus looking inwardly to find and identify their own. Yes. Yes, dear one. You're on it. You're on it. Jet, other question? My distress about the attempted takeover of two branches of government has me in a fog. I need help focusing. Recommendations. My biggest recommendation is to honor where you're at. If you're in pain, honor that. If you're in distress, honor it. If you're in disbelief, honor it. You're in a fog, I'm proud of you for recognizing it. It's when we don't recognize where we're at that we have the potential of harming ourselves. Yes. When we walk blindly into something or we negate something, we help to replicate the ill or the problem or the distress, or at least sustain it. So, recommendation is to do what you're doing, is honoring it, and then allowing yourself to take one step at a time. Don't overwhelm yourself, as I was reminded by a remarkable professional yesterday and this morning. Breathe. Breathe. You can work through it. You don't have to fight yourself. Just turn down the noise, whether it's television, radio, turn off your computer for a moment, telephone. Breathe. Get outside, get some fresh air where people are not walking around. If they're walking around, put on a mask. If they're not, get some fresh air, breathe in, breathe out, breathe in through your nose, breathe out through your mouth. Get that carbon dioxide out of your system. Be around trees, let it take it in and give you more oxygen. Honor what you enjoy, whether it's that beautiful flower, a plant, a child, an animal, an insect, the trees, the wind, the rain, the clouds, the water, the landscape, the architecture, your family. Honor. You're required to do something. Shift things a little bit so that you can do it at a pace that honors your well-being. And then just do what you can. I'm not speaking just from intellect, I'm speaking from experience. Be patient with yourself. Next question, Jet. Can't take my eyes off the news. Well, scanning social media for today's updates. The mob's attempt at insurrection, COVID, cases and deaths, containing fascism and violence. What to do? Whew. I'm imagining giving myself a massage right now. Yeah. The level of pain from all this. And I know mine's heightened because of Brian, but when we think about faith, faith is powerful. What to do? Be clear about what it is that you want to do that adds value to you. As my niece Christian says, go within. The answer's always within. They're never without. When you hear an answer that works with you, that resonates with you, it's because it was already there. Be silent. Whether you meditate, you pray, you engage in some dance or yoga, whatever you need to do it. Listen to some classical music, some jazz, some hip hop, whatever you need to do it. Play some drums, do it. The clarity comes to the surface when you give yourself what you need. Trust me. But more importantly, trust yourself. Do it, experience it. Those realities of life, they don't have to harm you permanently. And when you get to a level of understanding that works for you, you are able to minimize the pain. The pain is a natural part of being human. So let yourself go through the pain as you experience it. Don't try to hide it or stuff it away. That's when we end up getting these manifestations of ill health. Whether there's simple cold or flu, if there's anything simple about either one of those now in light of COVID, or whether it's something much more challenging, we believe, like lupus or cancer or something else, or COVID. Be loving to yourself. Please. Next question. I provide expertise, my time, my funds, and my knowledge. Wonderful. A fellow philanthropist to businesses in my community to ensure their basic survival now. Hopefully, what I'm doing will help them thrive. So what did we talk about earlier? The importance of being of value, and that by definition, what is philanthropy? It's helping to create a better world. And so thank you to you who are providing expertise, your time, your resources. You want businesses that I'm assuming would otherwise not be able to thrive to be able to thrive. That is powerful. So proud of you. Next question, Jet. As a mid-sized company, private company, we donate our time and money to what our employees believe in. Our employees receive time off to volunteer. I gave that example earlier. We are responsible for the overall well-being of the community. If not us, who? And if not now, when? I remember talking with another brother. I mentioned him a few times on this broadcast, Paul, about giving. And I remember someone we were talking to, and Paul said, "Oh yeah, I'm selfish when I give." And they were like, "Oh no, you're not a selfish person. You're a very giving person, because I know you've done this, 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 this." And I looked at the person, I said, "Oh no, he's selfish. He's definitely selfish. And so am I." And what we meant by that, and he jumped in before I could finish, or as I finished, and he says, "Yeah, she's right. My sister's right. I am definitely selfish. I do this because I get satisfaction out of this," as he said. So his value set is being fed. He's functioning with integrity. And for him, his political influence is through sharing that value in a way where that value gets paid forward. We want the ripple effect. And we firmly believe that in giving and investing in others through organization, through individuals directly, oh my goodness, the satisfaction, the greater well-being. I mean, when some of my nieces and nephews have seen me do, and godchildren have seen me do things that are giving, and I'm not even thinking about it because I'm wired. And I'm so pleased I'm able to do that with them, because they get to see and they get to have a model. They can choose to do whatever they want, They have a model. But here's the thing. When I am alone and no one knows I'm alone, and I'm washing my face, I look up in the mirror, I can smile because I'm thinking about that private, whatever I did that helps someone, and they don't even know my name. They don't need to know my name. But that's the gift that I give to myself. And that's the nature of what philanthropy, when it really is driven by VIP, values, integrity, and political influence. That's its capacity. And we know whether it's through a movie, but more importantly, more powerfully, through individuals. When one person invest, whatever they invest, when it's done with a kernel of truth, integrity, to influence in a healthy and responsible way, it has a ripple effect many times over. And sometimes we don't even get to live to experience the impact. I'm so pleased that Brian got to live to witness some of the impact of his service by seeing more Black, brown faces across television networks, by witnessing more in front of the camera, by, by knowing that more were even behind the camera, online, because of his leadership and those with him with whom he worked across different ethnic groups, gender, age, religious preferences, ideologies. Because it wasn't about you've got to fit into this widget or in this box or in this paradigm. It was about more broadly, how do we provide examples for more of us to be reminded that we get to be our best selves if we choose to. So today was supposed to be a day that I interviewed, had Andrew Lysek on. He is one of those many individuals who were troopers and troopers, our troopers in Georgia, Atlanta to be specific for him, making it, or on the outskirts of Atlanta, making a difference in terms of the elections outcome. And they did. They made a profound difference. So he will be on later on this month. He is sick today, and we want him to get well. And with that, I don't know if there's any other questions yet. I'll take one or two more if there's others. Okay, I think that's it. Thank you so much, Jet. With that, what I'd like to do is thank you for showing up today. Thank you for looking at this broadcast when you do and leveraging whatever kernels you find out of it or you experienced. The intent of this broadcast is to be inspiring. And even given my emotional state, I hope you were inspired. But more profoundly is to remind you of a set of mindset principles, of your capacity to lead and lead now, not 15 years from now, where you sit in a way that adds value. And so that you're able to, hopefully, if you are in a space where you're able to be here at the age of 80, at the age of 90, 100, 120, or whatever it happens to be, sit back and look back and say, wow, I'm so pleased I spent myself in service to. I gave in ways where I feel so an enormous amount of satisfaction and honor because others are now leveraging that. And the legacy is intergenerational. Philanthropy, when it's done right, at whatever level, it has that impact. And so don't wait till tomorrow, next year. Just go ahead and do it right now. I can give many examples. Someone's homeless on the street in these shoes, been there, understand that. See if you can get them shoes. Or as someone else did recently, there was a woman who was on the street. He had seen her for a long time, just passing, chose to get an apartment for her and paid for her apartment. That's extreme. Or is it? The level of satisfaction he got from that, oh my God. It didn't stop there. I want to make certain that she's able to sustain that after 5 years. Whether you're able to do a pair of shoes, a rental, an investment in a hospital, investment in libraries to keep them open, community childcare centers for children that are safe and healthy, or in families that are lacking food, your investment is invaluable. So thank you for what you already do, and thank you for what you will do that adds value for all of us. Why do?